The courtroom smells like varnish and old arguments. I'm 72, wearing the same dark suit I wore to my wife's funeral, and my left knee pops when I stand as the bailiff calls, "All rise." Judge Henrietta Calloway peers over her glasses, like she can weigh truth by the ounce. At the plaintiff's table sits my son, Dylan, in a navy suit I couldn't have afforded on my best year at the plant. His wife, Marina, crosses one leg and lets a gold bracelet flash like a signal. Their attorney smooths his tie, the kind of man who thinks confidence is a substitute for facts. I fold my hands to stop the tremor. I've held drill presses that screamed louder than any lawyer, and I'm still here. "I'll be fine." Dylan doesn't look at me. "That hurts more than the number on the summons. $400,000. They call it breach of verbal contract and even toss in elder financial abuse. Like I bullied them by saying no to a house I never lived in. Their attorney stands. "This case is about family obligation," he begins. "Promises spoken around holidays. I'll always be there for you." He points at me like I'm a vault, refusing to open, while my grandchildren sleep on dreams they can't afford. My attorney, Ava Patel, rises, calm voice, steel spine. "This isn't obligation," she says. "It's entitlement. The plaintiffs earn nearly $200,000 a year. They chose granite counters, a luxury car lease, and a mortgage beyond their means. There is no contract, only lifestyle." The judge lifts a hand. "We'll decide that from evidence, not speeches." I breathe in 4 counts, out 6, the way the night nurse taught my wife when pain made time crawl. The trick stayed after she didn't. If you're listening to this, maybe you've got a Dylan of your own. Maybe you're the parent who worked overtime so someone else could feel permanent weekends. Either way, we're in this together. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. It helps keep these stories going, and sometimes saying where you are is the first step to finding your way home. Judge Calloway leans forward. "Mr. Whitaker," she asked my son, "if your father had no savings, would we be here today?" Silence stretches thin. Marina studies the table. Dylan swallows. We all know the answer, no. This didn't start in a courtroom. It started on a Tuesday in my kitchen, when the eggs were cooling and the past was warming up for a fight. You can measure trouble by the sound of a car in your driveway. Dylan's tires didn't roll in. They bit the gravel sharp and fast. And he never brings Marina on a weekday unless something is brewing. That should have been my first warning. I opened the door before they knocked. Habit. My wife used to say a home should meet people halfway. "Dad." "Hey," Dylan said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marina gave me the kind of hug where nothing but perfume touches you. Sweet, expensive. A smell I paid for more times than I realized. Coffee?" I asked out of reflex. "No, Dad," Dylan said. "We actually came to talk about something important. That sentence ruins more lives than divorce papers." They sat at the kitchen table, the one I stripped and refinished the year my wife got sick, hoping the smell of fresh varnish might make her believe the world still had new beginnings left. It didn't work. Dylan slid a blue folder across the table. "This is the mortgage agreement for our house in Brookline. We're falling behind. The rates went up. And the kids, Leo's school, Ivy's therapy, everything's just crazy right now." Marina leaned forward. "We're not asking for charity, just support. Temporary support." I opened the folder. Numbers stared back at me like accusations. Their monthly payment was more than I paid per quarter when I bought this house in '88. "Dylan," I said quietly, this is a lot." He looked offended. "Dad, you have the money. You bought this place outright. You've got Mom's pension. You keep saying you want to help." "I help," I said. "But I don't fund lifestyles." Marina's smile froze. "It's not a lifestyle. It's our home." I didn't speak, just tapped the page that showed their second car, a luxury lease payment big enough to feed a family of 5. Their vacations, their subscription boxes, the kitchen remodel. "Sell the car," I said. "Trim the extras. Then we'll talk." Dylan's jaw tightened. "So that's a no." "It's a boundary." He pushed his chair back hard enough to scrape the floor. "We thought you'd step up for your grandkids." Guess we were wrong. They left without another word. Their tires chewed the gravel on the way out too. Louder this time. I stood there in my silent kitchen. staring at the blue folder like maybe if I closed it, the problem would close too. It didn't. 3 weeks later, the problem grew legs and knocked on my door wearing a badge. The weeks after that Tuesday felt colder than February deserves. I tried calling Dylan twice, once on a Sunday morning, once after Leo's school recital video popped up on my phone. Both times it went to voicemail. No callback, no text. Just silence, the kind of silence that vibrates with meaning. I kept busy. That's what my wife used to tell me when grief tried to sit on my chest. Hal, keep your hands moving. Your mind will follow. I raked leaves, fixed a hinge on the shed door, reorganized the garage 3 times until I couldn't tell if I was cleaning or hiding. Then, on a Thursday morning, a white sedan pulled up. The man who stepped out had the tired look of someone who's delivered bad news often enough to stop taking it personally. He held a clipboard. "Are you Harold Whittaker?" "Yes." He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served." That phrase hits harder than any punch. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were the words, "No parent should ever see," printed under their child's name. Plaintiff: Dylan Whittaker. Defendant: Harold Whittaker. Claim: breach of verbal contract, damages. Requested $400,000. There was more. Claims of ongoing emotional distress, and the cherry on top, pattern of financial manipulation. It felt surreal, like reading about a stranger until the paragraph that said he verbally agreed during Thanksgiving 2023 to assume the mortgage obligations for his son's family residence. Thanksgiving. Last Thanksgiving, I'd stood by the sink carving turkey and said, "I'll always try to help you, son. Try. Not promise." Not contract, not mortgage. I sat down on the porch step because my legs weren't sure they could hold me. The process server hesitated. "Look," he said quietly, "I see a lot of these. Doesn't mean they win. Just means they're desperate." He walked away, leaving tire tracks in the dust and a lawsuit in my lap. That night I couldn't finish my sandwich. I couldn't sleep either. I kept hearing Dylan's voice from years ago, when he was 10, scraped his knee and cried into my shirt, "Dad, don't let go." Now he was the one letting go. The next morning I called a lawyer. I didn't know it yet, but Ava Patel was about to become the only person in my life willing to fight for me when my own son wouldn't. The receptionist at Patel and Greer offered me lemon water, which felt like an insult to the situation. I just wanted answers, or strength, or both. When Ava Patel walked in, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, I knew I wasn't getting soft comfort. I was getting a scalpel. She shook my hand. "Mr. Whittaker, I've reviewed the filing. You didn't come here to lose. Good." I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. She spread the lawsuit pages across her desk. "Your son is claiming a verbal contract made on Thanksgiving 2023. Did you ever agree to pay their mortgage?" "No," I said. "I told him I'd try to help, that's all." "That's not a contract," she replied. "Not even close." She tapped the section labeled Damages Requested. They're asking for nearly $500,000. "That's ambitious," I winced. "What happens now?" "We go into discovery," Ava said. "That means we request their financial documents. Bank statements, credit card bills, spending history, car leases, texts, emails, everything." I swallowed. "You think they'll comply?" "They'll comply," she said. "People who sue usually think they look cleaner on paper than they do." Then she pulled out a yellow legal pad. "Tell me about their lifestyle. Any recent changes?" "New car," I said. "Luxury. Marina's got 3 subscription boxes. They remodeled their kitchen last spring." Ava's eyebrows climbed. "On their income?" "They make good money," I said. "Together almost 200,000. "Ah," she said, sitting back. "So we have a mismatch. High lifestyle, low discipline, and a parent they assume is a safety net." She pushed a pen toward me. "Write down every time Dylan or Marina asked for financial help in the last 5 years. Even small things. Gas money, credit cards, holidays. I need a pattern." I did as she said. The list grew longer than I wanted to admit. Emergency car repair, rent shortfall, surprise birthday party for the kids, flight tickets, fancy restaurant bills they forgot to cover. When I finished, Ava slid the list closer. "This isn't support. This is dependency disguised as love. Her directness hurt, but truth often does. A week later, discovery documents arrived, pages and pages of expenses that read like a catalogue of impulsive choices. A 200-month luxury SUV lease, 680-month high-end gym membership, $900 in skincare and supplements, multiple vacations, $4,300 spent on home decor in 2 months. Ava whistled. They don't need help. They need boundaries. I stared at the stack. He used to ask me for $5 for ice cream. Ava softened just for a second. And now he wants $400,000. Her voice returned to steel. We'll fight every inch. I left her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The truth can do that. Free you and break you in one breath, but the worst part wasn't the numbers. It was realizing Dylan expected me to fold easily. He had forgotten who raised him. The holidays came early that year, not in decorations or music, but in the ache of knowing someone would be missing. My wife used to start baking in November. Cinnamon, nutmeg, the smell of belonging. That season always made the house feel bigger. Now it made the silence feel louder. The lawsuit had frozen everything between me and Dylan. No texts. No photos of the kids, not even the usual Merry Christmas group message Marina sends out to look thoughtful. It was like I'd been cut from the family tree with pruning shears, so I filled the space with motion. I fixed the porch light, repainted the mailbox, took walks around the lake even when the wind stung my cheeks. I kept thinking about something my wife said once during her chemo sessions. If the world shrinks on you, Hal, make your world bigger from the inside. So I tried. I joined a watercolor class at the community center. I was terrible. My trees looked like bruised broccoli. But the teacher, Loretta, a warm woman in her late 60s with paint on her sleeves, said, "Bad art is still art, and broken hearts still beat." That stayed with me. I went to church potlucks again. Delilah, an old friend, hugged me and whispered, "Family hurts worst because we let them." She didn't ask for details. Sometimes that's the kindest thing a person can do. But nights were harder. I'd sit with the discovery documents spread across my table, trying not to memorize the lines that proved my son's priorities. It wasn't the money, it was the pattern, the taking, the assumption that my life savings were a communal pool. On Christmas Eve, I wrapped a small gift for Leo and Ivy, a pair of storybooks I used to read to Dylan. I left them unmailed. What was I supposed to do? Send them through a lawyer? I thought about calling Dylan just to say, "I miss you." But pride is a strange armor, heavy, protective, and impossible to remove once you strap it on. So I went to bed early, alone, listening to wind instead of my family's laughter. But something shifted in those quiet weeks. I stopped wishing for the past to return. I started preparing for the fight ahead, because the trial date was approaching, and my son was about to learn who I really was. Not the wallet he imagined, but the man who raised him. The morning of the trial felt like stepping into weather that didn't match the sky. Sun was out, but the air carried a heaviness, like the world knew something I didn't. I ironed my shirt twice, hands shaking once. Not from fear, from disbelief. How had we come to this? Inside the courthouse, Ava Patel met me with her usual steady nod. "Deep breaths, Mr. Whitaker. Remember, truth doesn't need decoration." I nodded, gripping the folder she'd prepared for me. Receipts, texts, financial logs. My life in paper form. When we entered the courtroom, Dylan and Marina were already seated. Marina wore a pearl necklace I hadn't seen before. Dylan stared ahead, jaw clenched. No greeting. Not even eye contact. Just distance. The judge took her seat. "Opening statements," she said. Their attorney stood first. Slick voice, smooth suit. "Your Honor, this case is about a father's promise, one he made freely and repeatedly, a promise his son and daughter-in-law relied upon. They built a home, a life, believing he would honor his word. We intend to show emotional harm, financial damage, and unjust abandonment. Abandonment." That word cut deeper than any number on the claim. Then it was Ava's turn. She rose like someone stepping onto solid ground. This case, she said, is not about promises. It's about pressure. The plaintiffs earn nearly $200,000 a year. They bought a home outside their means, leased luxury vehicles, and remodeled a kitchen while missing mortgage payments. When their spending outweighed their income, they turned not to budgeting, but to litigation. She lifted one document. There is no contract, no written agreement, no verbal promise beyond a father saying the words, "I will try to help." That is compassion, not a mortgage. The judge nodded slowly. "Bring in your first witness." They called Dylan. Watching your child walk to a witness stand is one thing. Watching him do it to testify against you is something else entirely. Something sharp, something that takes your breath. He sat, took the oath, cleared his throat. "My father said he would take care of the mortgage," he said. "We relied on that. We made decisions based on that." Ava stood. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "did your father ever say, clearly and specifically, that he would assume your mortgage obligation?" Dylan hesitated. "A heartbeat too long. He said he'd always help us," he answered. "That wasn't my question." He swallowed. Marina stared at him, nudging his arm under the table. "No," he said finally, "not in those exact words." A whisper rippled across the courtroom. My heart cracked a little, but not because he said it, because he almost didn't. After Dylan stepped down, the judge called for a brief recess. I stayed seated. My legs weren't ready to stand. My heart wasn't ready to move. I watched my son return to the plaintiff's table. Marina leaned in and whispered something that tightened his jaw again. When court resumed, it was Marina's turn. She walked to the stand like she was auditioning for a role, a victim maybe, or a saint under pressure. She took the oath with a trembling hand that didn't fool Ava for a second. Their attorney began softly. "Marina, can you describe the emotional impact of Harold withdrawing his support?" She nodded dramatically, eyes moist. "It's been devastating. I mean, we thought we were building a future together. He said he'd step in. He said he wanted us to focus on the kids. We took that as a promise." Ava rose so smoothly you'd think she'd been waiting for that exact line. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, "you claim emotional distress. Let's discuss what that looked like." Ava approached with a stack of papers. "Are these your credit card statements?" Marina stiffened. I guess," Ava read aloud. "Luxury spa, $740. Boutique clothing, $1,200. Vacation deposit, $2,800. Monthly supplement subscriptions, $410, the courtroom murmured. "These expenses occurred," Ava continued, "during the same months you and your husband were allegedly struggling to survive, correct?" Marina's cheeks flushed. "Those were necessary. Stress relief," Ava raised a brow. "A $200 handbag is stress relief?" The judge tapped her pen. Marina wilted. Then Ava delivered the cut. "You stated that Harold withdrawing support caused you emotional harm. But according to these statements, your spending increased after the alleged promise fell through. How do you explain that?" Marina opened and closed her mouth. I don't know the specifics. My husband handles the accounts." Ava nodded. "Understood." Then she turned to the judge. "No further questions." The judge looked at Marina for a long, quiet second. Not angry, just disappointed. Then she asked the question that shook the room. "Mrs. Whitaker, if Harold had no house, no pension, no savings, would you still claim he promised to cover your mortgage?" The silence was suffocating. "No," Marina whispered. It was almost inaudible, but the court reporter caught it. And everyone felt it. Truth, revealed under pressure, is the loudest sound in any courtroom. Dylan looked down. His attorney looked defeated. Ava just closed her folder, like she'd expected the answer all along. For the first time in months, I felt the power shift. Not gloating, not victory, just balance. The kind a father should have had from the start. By the time the closing statements wrapped, you could feel the room leaning in one direction. Even the air seemed to tilt. Their attorney tried to salvage the case with emotional language, family duty, generational stability, implied promises, but after Marina's confession, it all sounded like a sales pitch that had lost its customer. Judge Calloway cleared her throat. "I've reviewed the filings, testimony, and supporting documents." Dylan straightened. Marina gripped his sleeve like she was bracing for turbulence. The judge continued, "There is no enforceable contract, verbal or written. The defendant's statement, 'I will try to help,' is not a binding financial commitment. The plaintiff's financial records demonstrate choices, not hardship. And the court cannot compel a parent to subsidize an adult child's lifestyle." Then the gavel dropped. Case dismissed with prejudice. Court costs to the plaintiffs. It was over. My breath left my chest like someone had turned off a valve. Months of fear, shame, anger evaporated with one sentence. Ava smiled only slightly, the way professionals do when victory is expected, but still satisfying. Dylan didn't move. His face collapsed in slow motion. Anger, confusion, then something almost like regret flashing across it before Marina tugged his arm. We exited the courtroom. Ava shook my hand. "You did good, Mr. Whitaker. I didn't do anything. You stood your ground. Most parents don't." She left, heels clicking down the hall. I was turning toward the exit when I heard, "Dad!" Dylan stood behind me, shoulders hunched, eyes watery but defiant. "Why'd you fight me like that?" he asked. "You could have just helped." I met his eyes. "I've helped, Dylan, for years. But you asked for something no parent should give up. Their security, my home, my future." "That house was our chance," he muttered. "Then you should have bought a house you could afford." He flinched. Marina folded her arms. "So that's it? You're choosing money over family?" I shook my head. "No, I'm choosing boundaries. You sued me, Marina. You turned a father into a defendant." Dylan looked away. She pulled his arm. They walked off without saying goodbye. For the first time in a long time, the hallway felt warm, because I wasn't walking away from my family. I was walking away from the version of them that wanted to destroy me. 6 months is a strange amount of time. Long enough for wounds to scab, short enough for them to sting when you stretch. Life didn't go back to normal. There's no normal after your own child drags you into court, but it did go forward. The first change was the quiet. Not the painful kind from before. This was a gentler silence, a peaceful one. I filled it with small routines. Morning walks, watercolor class, Tuesday breakfasts at the diner where the waitress calls me sweetheart without irony. Little things that remind a man he's still alive. I also did something I never expected. I went to therapy. Ava had suggested it offhand after the verdict. Litigation leaves scars. "Talk to someone," she'd said, so I did. A counselor named Ruth Daniels, silver braid. Glasses that hung low on her nose, a voice like soft sandpaper, gentle but honest. She said something on my second session that hit harder than the lawsuit. Parents mistake unconditional love for unlimited sacrifice. I sat with that for days, maybe years, because I realized I had spent decades stepping up so Dylan never had to step in. I filled the gaps. I patched the mistakes. I fixed problems he never learned to face. I taught him kindness and responsibility. Yes, but I also taught him unintentionally that I was the fallback plan for every bad choice, and it nearly cost me everything. Around early spring, a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten, shaky, from Dylan. No apology. Not exactly. People like him don't start with "I'm sorry." They start with "I've been thinking," but the tone was softer, tired, human. He wrote about the stress, the pressure, the shame. He mentioned the kids, how Leo asked why Grandpa doesn't come over anymore. That one line bruised my heart. I didn't write back at first. Boundaries aren't just walls, they're pauses, spaces where you choose carefully. 3 weeks later, after another session with Ruth, I sent a short letter. 2 paragraphs. I told him I loved him. I told him I wasn't his bank. And I told him rebuilding trust was possible, but slow. He hasn't pushed since, and for the first time in a long time. I feel like a father again. Not a wallet, not a safety net. A father. The reunion didn't happen with balloons, hugs, or dramatic apologies. Life doesn't usually give us movie endings. It happened quietly, on a Saturday morning in May, in the park near the duck pond. I was finishing my walk when I heard a small voice behind me. "Grandpa." I turned. Leo stood there holding a soccer ball almost as big as his chest. Ivy was beside him, hair in uneven pigtails. And behind them, slow, hesitant Dylan. For a moment, everything inside me froze. 6 months of courtroom echoes hung in the air. Then Leo ran to me like none of that mattered. "Grandpa! Look, I can kick it far now." I lifted him, he's heavier now, and something in my chest unlocked. Ivy hugged my leg. "Children forgive, long before adults do." Dylan approached, hands in pockets. "I didn't know if you'd want to see them," he said. "I want to see my grandkids," I replied. "Always," he nodded, staring at the ground. "I messed up, not an apology, not yet. But the closest thing to a door opening. I know you think I'm selfish," he said. "Maybe I am. I was scared. I thought asking for help was easier than admitting we were drowning." "You weren't drowning," I said gently. "You were spending." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, therapy's been eye-opening. That surprised me. But it also explained the letter. The kids begged me to watch them kick the ball, so we walked to the field. Dylan stood beside me, the silence no longer sharp, just unfamiliar. "Dad," he said quietly, "I don't expect anything from you. Not anymore. I'm working on fixing things, financially, personally." "That's good," I said. "Responsibility's the only thing that grows you," he nodded slowly. I'd like to rebuild things, if you'll let me." I looked at him. My boy, older now, but still carrying the ghost of the 10-year-old who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during road trips. "I'm open to rebuild," I said, "but slowly. With boundaries," he agreed. We watched Leo kick the ball crookedly across the grass. Ivy clapped like it was the World Cup. The wind moved through the trees, soft but present. A reminder that even damaged branches keep growing if you let them. As the sun dipped behind the field, I turned to you, the one listening. If you're a parent, hear this. Love your children. Support them. But don't sacrifice your entire life so they can avoid building their own. Help them stand. Don't lie down so they can walk over you. And hey, if this story spoke to you, you already know what I'm going to say. Before you go, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Stories like this keep us honest. And sometimes honesty is the only inheritance we really need. The end.